Hey there, everyone. A very happy Thursday evening to you all. I am Maya Engel, and you are tuning in to UpNorthLive Unscripted at 6:30. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's start off with weather, and the past couple days have been really nice, really sunny, and that's how today started. But now
hmm
things are looking a little more cloudy and a little more wet in some areas, right, Joe?
Yeah, the day started just like the rest of the week, but then unlike the rest of the week, we had the clouds roll in today. And upstream, it is cool. It's Marquette. I was just looking, it's 55
Oh,
right now.
gosh.
So yeah, and we had 80s here in spots today. So that's what's coming in. And I think that's the big weather story, Maya, is just how cool it's going to get tomorrow and Saturday. But sometimes you get this cool weather coming in, as you know,
Mhm.
and it'll be a week straight. It stays that way, but not this time because we are going to warm right back up next week again. So, like
Nice.
I said yesterday, it's a little practice for fall,
Yeah.
and then we'll get back into some summer weather coming up here. But I'll have a lot more. We'll take a look at radar too, show you where some of that rain is coming up a little later in the show.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joe. We are going to start off with our top story of the day. So, a Benzie County community is questioning why its Coast Guard station was never staffed this summer. Now, this comes after a boat capsized near the Frankfurt Pier last week. You may have recalled the story. We did talk about it a lot. A person who was on that boat was missing. They did end up finding his body. So, one person survived, one person unfortunately did not survive. So our Allie Baxter has more on the impact of the staffing decision at the Frankfurt Coast Guard and also took the community concerns and questions to the Coast Guard to get some answers. Here's her story.
Station here in Frankfurt has operated for over 100 years, but soon that operation turned from being fully staffed year-round to just seasonal, to this summer not being staffed at all.
Yeah, and that was hard for us to adjust to because you're always used to reaching out to your partners and saying, I need some help.
With no more Coast Guard staffing, the Frankfurt Fire Department volunteers are the closest first responders for the beach and surrounding coastline.
DNR, the Sheriff's Department boat will be called out as well, so it's going to impact us. I mean, we're all going to wind up going to be a little bit short-handed because we're normally right there at the beach.
Chief Mike Cederholm says the impact was noticeable when recently a boat capsized near Frankfurt Beach. The Frankfurt Fire Department doesn't have a rescue boat to help because that's something the Coast Guard had. Would these situations have been different if we did have a Coast Guard here?
I think that the response time would probably been a lot quicker.
Unfortunately, the Coast Guard, much like all the other branches, is suffering a bit of a recruitment issue.
I spoke to Lieutenant Philip Gertler about the lack of staffing. He explains the Frankfurt station isn't closed, but they have reallocated staff to Manistee.
So what we've decided to do with those seasonal stations is transition to them into what we're calling a forward operating location, or FOL. And what that means is we are not getting rid of the assets, we are not getting rid of the building, we are still maintaining it.
So why shift staff away from Frankfurt? The lieutenant says it comes down to how busy the stations are and which ones overlap with coverage.
We didn't kind of just throw darts on the board. There was a lot of thought and effort that went into this and is continuing to go into this to make sure that it is as efficient as possible.
It's not just Frankfurt Station. The Ludington Station was not staffed this summer either, also falling under Manistee's umbrella of responsibility.
It will always be temporary. Once we have the numbers to return to how we were in the past, that is the plan.
Until they return, the Coast Guard has left a hole in the Frankfurt community.
What can we do to make this better? And if there's need assistance, if they need auxiliary personnel, let's get the word on out and see what we can do to make a change.
In Benzie County, Allie Baxter, UpNorthLive News.
And Allie is joining us live now from our newsroom to talk a little more about this story. Hi, Allie. Welcome back to Unscripted.
Hey, Maya. I love when we get to talk multiple times a week.
I know. How lucky are we and our viewers?
We are. And I think we've got like a good thing going here, too.
I think so, too. So it sounds like, based on your story, that the biggest issue is the lack of staff in general. And that's why they kind of pulled the staffing from Frankfurt Coast Guard. So is the Coast Guard doing anything to try to, attract more people?
Yeah. So that was one of the questions I asked today, and to dive into all their recruitment strategies would have been like a lot to fit in that story, but they are doing different things. And they said, we truly believe that we have made up for, they're saying they have lost about 10% of the staff that they had. They said, we feel like we have made up that number, but we won't really know until a few years from now in the future, because all those people, all those guys that we feel like we have recruited, well, they're still in training schools and stuff like that. So we don't really know if any of our recruitment has gone up and made our staffing a little bit more attainable. But something I did think that was pretty interesting is some of the people in Frankfurt have said, hey, this is the Great Lakes. We are a big Coast Guard community area. Why aren't there ROTC programs here? And so that's something that first responders in Frankfurt told me they would love to see. They're like, we have a lot of interested people. We have an air station in Traverse City. We have so many marine stations along the coastline. We feel like an ROTC program would be a great way to get interest, and even looking further down the line into the future of addressing that staffing. And that's something they already do in New Jersey, actually.
So something else that I thought was pretty interesting in your story is the fact that the Frankfurt Fire Department doesn't have a rescue boat because the Coast Guard station always did. So in the meantime, while there are no staff at the Coast Guard station, do you think the fire department would look into potentially getting their own boat?
I think so. And I think because no one really knew what the staffing situation would be this summer, before it was kind of too late. They didn't even know they had to request a boat, and something like that, as you know, Maya, has to go up, not just the city council. It goes beyond that to, Benzie County commissioners even. And I don't know if that's something that they think, hey, we need to ask for, because technically, the Benzie County Sheriff's Office has a boat and the DNR has a boat. But those things take time. It takes a lot of time to first make that call and then get that person to get the boat in Beulah or wherever it's stored, and then come all the way over to Frankfurt Beach. So it would be really beneficial if the Frankfurt Fire Department did have a boat. They said this just wasn't something that we even were aware that we needed, because there is technically still one at the Coast Guard. It's just locked away.
It's unfortunate when situations like this happen, where it takes a tragedy to really make people realize that, oh, we maybe need some more resources, or we maybe need to do something different, because right now things are not working.
Right. And I think, Maya, too, we've seen over the past, I would say 2 months, it just seems like there's been one incident after the other in Frankfurt. And it's really kind of opened the community's eyes to saying, wait a minute, don't we normally have Coast Guard staffing here? Where are they? Because in situations like this, well, they would be right here. And in certain drownings and stuff, that's not always preventable with the Coast Guard. But in the situation the other week with that capsized boat, I mean, you had the Frankfurt fire chief even saying, I think the response time would have been a lot quicker, because they got out there and they could assess the situation, but they said, what can we do? We don't have a boat, and they're already, beyond our means out there. We can't swim out to them. So what should we do? And something I thought was pretty interesting when talking to the Coast Guard is they said, in this situation, they will send out, because, they're coming from Manistee now, and that's pretty far away. They will actually send out some type of signal to nearby boaters to let them know, hey, we need a good Samaritan to come drop in and see if you can do something to help. And they said in this situation, there were some good Samaritans that came to the capsized boat to see what they could do. But even then, if you're just out on the water and you're fishing, there's not a lot that you can do. You really need the Coast Guard or a first responder of some kind that's trained to deal with that situation.
And the Coast Guard did say in your story that not having staff there in Frankfurt is a temporary decision. So do we know when staff could potentially come back?
I did ask about that timeline, and they said, we'll look at things and we'll see, based on caseload and stuff like that, if it is a good decision to bring back seasonal staffing to Frankfurt, but that decision wouldn't be made public until at least spring 2025.
Wow. So for the remainder of this summer, and I guess maybe by next summer, they could then have staff.
Yeah, that's something that they said they have. Apparently, there's an entire department who looks at, how busy your station is, what your caseload is like. And then something we touched on in the story as well was overlapping coverage. So they look at, oh, well, Manistee is also kind of covering the same area that Frankfurt is, and so is Traverse City's air station. So they should be good. But we know from living here in northern Michigan that that's still a lot of miles of lakeshore to cover. And that seems pretty unfair to ask Manistee to bear that burden, not just to the north where Frankfort is, but also they're going down and helping Ludington too.
And then it makes me wonder, is that putting a strain on the staff in Manistee? Because like you said, they're going to Ludington, they're going to Frankfort, and then they're also in Manistee.
Right. And something I thought was interesting, I asked him, I was like, why specifically Manistee? Because they are kind of serving as the parent right now of Ludington and Frankfort. Why Manistee? Is it just central? Is it, just, better for that reason? And he said, again, it just comes down to caseload and what stations they think can do the best in that situation. And being centrally located also helps as well.
Does make sense. Anything else you want to mention, Allie?
I would say, kind of going back to, it's not just Frankfort, it is Ludington as well. And something I think we were talking about having a newsroom discussion earlier too, of we've had a lot of incidents this summer in Ludington, Mason County as well. And it kind of brings up the question of, do we need that Coast Guard there during the summer? Was it not the best decision to take that staffing out, especially, we're a little bit closer to Frankfort, so we are a little bit more aware of all the things that happen there. But I know we've definitely had a few drownings in the Ludington area as well. So hopefully, as we look ahead to the future, the Coast Guard looks ahead to the future, staffing is something that could be brought back. Like they said, this is temporary. We are not closing this station, even though there is nobody here. We want to make sure that we can return staffing at any point that we could do that.
Right. All right, Allie, thanks so much for joining us on Unscripted again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Maya.
And another story that we are working on today is about the ferry service to Drummond Island. So the Michigan Department of Transportation is making a major investment to improve access to Drummond Island. A $15 million state grant is being allocated to build a new ferry boat. And our very own Daniel Zivian, he spoke with the Eastern Upper Peninsula Transportation Authority about what this means for the island's future.
The town of Detour sits in the UP's remote eastern corner, with Drummond Island just off the coast in Lake Huron. But that remoteness is attracting more visitors.
We've had an increase in traffic at Drummond Island. That combined with, it's an off-road destination and a hunting and fishing sportsman's destination, and it is getting greater all the time as far as our customer base, our visitors, and our need for an additional ferry boat.
And that's with the ferry service working at full strength. Detour resident Joe Barrett works at the museum watching the traffic go by.
If one of the ferries up at Lake Nebish or one of the other islands up here break down, they'll steal one of these boats. And if they do that, the lineup is a half mile out of town. They can't handle the traffic, so they could use the boat.
When you have 2 and 3 hour waits, it's tough for the local economy, business owners. So this will help improve local economy, get people more efficiently on and off the island, and a general improvement of life for our islanders and community.
MDOT's $15 million grant for a new ferry does not come with a timeline, but Poramsky says at minimum, a boat could be ready for summer 2026. He says UPTA is in the early stages of finding a naval architect for the project. In Chippewa County, Daniel Zivian, UpNorthLive News.
Sorry about that. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll check back in with our chief meteorologist, Joe Charlevoix. He'll have much more on this fall-like weather coming up and when we're going to see more summer-like weather again, right after the break. Okay, before I bring in Joe, I just realized I forgot to show our question of the day today. And you know what? I'll bring in Joe right now so he can answer this as well. So, our question of the day was related to that story about the ferry service to Drummond Island. So, the question is, what is your favorite Michigan island to visit? Joe, what's your favorite island?
You know, I've been to Mackinac Island only once. I enjoyed my visit, and I have also not been to Drummond Island. I shouldn't admit that, but that's true. I did enjoy my visit to Beaver Island, though. Largest island in Lake Michigan, just a nice atmosphere there. I really like that. My favorite island in the entire Great Lakes, though, Maya, is in Wisconsin. It's the Apostle Islands up in way western Lake Superior.
Sure.
But that's where I like to go camping, or used to. So, what's yours?
I would have to say Mackinac Island. I went to Drummond Island once as a kid, and it was really cool, but I don't really remember it. And I've actually never been to Beaver Island or North and South Manitou Islands. So
well,
it's got to
not
be
too late.
Yeah, right. I got time. I'll get there. So we'll pull up our question of the day again a little later, but let's turn things back over to the weather, shall we, Joe?
Yeah, and let's take a look. This is showed some video yesterday. Just we had a little more to show you. This is Elk Lake. This was taken at Whitewater Township Park, our UpNorthLive Skyview drone. Look at that. Look at the water.
Wow.
There.
Oh my gosh.
The color, beautiful. Flying over. Yeah, not long from now we'll see some ice forming, but not quite yet. But you know what I mean. Nice view there on Elk Lake. Tonight we have a cold front coming in. We talked about this yesterday. There it is. It's just about over the top of us right now. It's bringing in kind of a broken line of showers to northern Michigan, and then some cooler weather settling in behind that. You see that here. Look how warm it is still in the lower peninsula. Traverse City is still 79. These are the temperatures currently. But Marquette is down to 54. And then up north of Lake Superior, it's in the 40s. And that is going to make a beeline right toward northern Michigan. And you see that right there. This will settle in as we head towards Saturday into the start of the weekend. It won't last long. You see the blue there. That's the cooler weather. That'll head out of here. And then we start warming up next week. And actually, it looks like a pretty big warm up. So while we'll see 50s tomorrow, there's Friday afternoon. 50s Saturday, there's Saturday afternoon. We'll start getting back into the 60s on Sunday, maybe 70 in some spots. And then by the end of next week, 80s returning. So this cool weather isn't going to hang on all too long. There's a look at radar. You can see this passing line of showers. And going forward, here's what we're looking at. Occasional showers tonight. Not a lot of rain. And what does fall will be on the very light side. Cloudy tomorrow, a lot of showers. A little more numerous later in the day into the evening tomorrow night. And then Saturday, showers. You can see some of that right there. And then Sunday, we'll start seeing the system pulling away. And outside of a spotty shower or two, pretty quiet on Sunday. Here's the extended forecast. Boy, look at the cool down Friday and Saturday. And then Sunday is the day we start getting back near 70 at least. And then next week looks warm and dry. No rain really in the forecast next week, Monday all the way through Thursday in many spots, Maya, getting back into the 80s. So we have both for you. We have a taste of fall if you like that. And we also have some summer returning next week.
So what you're saying is we should buckle up because it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride the next few days.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Joe. We are going to take another quick break, but we'll check back in with our sports director, Harrison Beebe, in just a few minutes. Well, we are approaching week 2 for the high school football season, and we have some conference implications early on, and two teams facing must-win situations against each other. So Brendan Quealy of the Traverse City Record Eagle sits down with our sports director, Harrison Beebe, and this week's Jimmy John's Sports Corner to talk about these big matchups.
Is sponsored by Jimmy John's of Traverse City.
In my opinion, one of the most interesting conference races this year is going to be the Legacy Division of the NMFC. We're going to have a lot of good games throughout the season, and that starts with Glen Lake and Frankfort here in week 2. Two longtime rivals, and now it feels like they're both real threats to win that title.
Yeah, and especially when you saw what the offenses did last week. They both put up big numbers. The issue here is Frankfort also allowed 38 points to a very good Mansalona team, or an up-and-coming Mansalona team, I should say, and Glen Lake got the 55-0 shutout. So it is going to come down to who can stop the other team, because points are going to be scored in this game, but you'll need a couple of key stops to come out on top.
Speaking of teams putting up a lot of points and shutouts, the reigning league champion East Jordan is now going on the road to a Johannesburg-Lewiston team that got a win over Harbor Springs week 1. So they'll get a little more of a test probably than they did last week with the UP team.
Yeah, the Red Devils have kind of taken it to the Cardinals the last few years, and with this being the senior year for a lot of those Joburg players, I would imagine they kind of want to end that. But yeah, they are going up against a very talented East Jordan team.
Two teams that didn't have week 1s like they planned, but man, do they really want a win in week 2 to avoid an 0-2 hole. Kingsley visiting Gaylord.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since either program has started 0-2. I think 2017 was the last time for Kingsley. That was before Tim Moore came back as head coach. 2020 for Gaylord, but of course that was the odd COVID year that was, and before that it was 2017. I did not see Kingsley play. I did see Gaylord play, and they struggled a bit against Traverse City West. That was on both sides. That was kind of a rough game. They might have a chance against Kingsley, but Kingsley is a very disciplined, well-run team. They certainly will not want to start a post-state championship season at 0-2.
All right, we're going to take another break, but when we come back, we will take another look at our question of the day. So stay with us. You're watching Up North Live Unscripted. Our question of the day today is, what is your favorite Michigan island to visit? 11% say Beaver Island, 17% say Drummond Island, 50% Mackinac Island, and 9% say North and South Manitou Islands, while 13% say other. If you haven't voted yet, you can scan the QR code on your screen right now. I will keep that up for a few minutes if you're watching online after the show ends. But just taking a look at some of the comments on our Facebook post with this question, Tom says Beaver Island, Dawn says Bois Blanc, and let me know if I'm saying that right because I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about that pronunciation. Clark says South Manitou, and Jim says Zug. I'm not sure where Zug is, so if you also want to let me know where that is, that would be great. But that'll do it today for Up North Live Unscripted at 6:30. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you back here tonight on Up North Live News at 11.